So in the last tutorial we talked about functions, defining a function. After defining a function, we talked about the pass statements. So in this tutorial today we are going to talk about perimeters. So perimeters, while defining our functions, we actually assign values to our arguments at the beginning of the process. So the assigning of a value to our arguments at the beginning of our process when we are writing what we call a function. So this is what I'm trying to mean. The writing, let me say parameters. Oops. So this is what I call parameter function. So the assigning of a value like w, that's a parameter. That assigned value is called a parameter. That's called a parameter. Then let me say capital A, that's also called a parameter. You can say that's also called a parameter. Also a string can be a parameter. Let me say a string can be a parameter like this. Anything, a name, anything like self, anything like post, anything. It can be an integer, anything can be a string. All these values we have assigned at the beginning of our process when we are writing a function inside the parentheses. These are called what they call perimeters. So we can write a function about something or about someone's height and age, already giving out one of those values in advance. So let's say that w represent what they call height, someone's height. Then a represents someone's age. Let me say it's 35 years old. So if we try to print out the height, comma, and his age, the height and his age, don't need this. So when we try to print out the height and his age, let me see, let's print out the height. Let's say height is w. Let me say height is w. So height is w. Then let's say age is going to be n. Let's age represent n. Let's just do like that. So if we try to call our function that a w is equivalent to is height, let me see, is w is equivalent to 150 as the height, then age is 35. So when we run our program we get an error. So the error is saying that second function Yeah, cause second function don't have second function. We have what they call perimeter function, not a second function. So how they call a perimeter function, not a second function. So if we try to run our program, we shall see that the white, it's going to print out the white 150 and 35 as the edge. So white is 150, then edge is 35 according to the program, the function we have defined here. This is all of the stuff we have been trying to tell our Python. So when executed, we have got the answer. So what I was trying to say, this is that W is, we are trying to explain what a perimeter is. So W is a perimeter, then A is also a perimeter. So 150 is a perimeter variable, is a value assigned to a perimeter. So also this 35 is a value assigned to a perimeter A. Then 150 is a value assigned to a perimeter W. So W, so if A, then this is A, we assign A by default with its value 35. So maybe you have tried to get me. So A by default has been assigned by its value. So let's try this and see whether it will work. Then let's first remove 150 and we run our program and we see. We remove 35 and run our program and we see. Yeah, we also get the same value, in that when we assign a value in figure, when we have tried to call the function to put in the value of the perimeter, we note that the value inside this, the value we have put in the called function, it takes the perimeter which has not been assigned by default. When we insert or we assign a value for a perimeter, when in our called function, it takes the perimeter which has not been assigned by default, which has not been assigned a value by default. So we should note that W is not assigned by default, whereby edge A is assigned by default with 35. So we have just passed through 150 in the calling function, in that, so 150 has been taken or has been assigned to W automatically, cause when we were assigning the perimeters in the beginning, W was not assigned. So it does not matter whether you assign A in the function after calling a function, because A has been already assigned by default. So even if you don't assign it by after calling the function, Python will understand that this value, it represents a perimeter which is not assigned by default. So it's necessary or unnecessarily to again assign sorry again to assign a value of 35. That's not So let's assign, let's change this and assign W. Let's assign W that it has a weight of, let me say, a weight of 8 kilograms. 80 kilograms. Then we shall pass his age. By default, we have assigned the weight to be 80 kilograms, yet the age we haven't assigned it by default the value, so we are going to assign it when after calling the function. So in that the function, the value you are going to put in the function, as you see when you try to move, it tells you that A is unfilled. Perimeter A is unfilled, is empty, is not assigned. So when you try any value we assigned in this parenthesis, we see that it's going to take the perimeter of A. So let's say is 60 years old. Is 60 years old. What's wrong? Non-default perimeter. Let's run and see. Oops. Let's change this. Let's change the arrangement. So notice also the arrangement matters. So if you try to run, yeah. So notice when you try to assign, when you are trying to assign a perimeter by default, notice that the first perimeter cannot be assigned. You must only assign the second, the third, the fourth perimeters can only be assigned. So as you have seen, we tried to assign the age when the age was here. So was before was the second perimeter. So when we try to run our program, we got an error. As you see, we try to get an error because that's what we got a syntax error. So meaning that we can't assign the first perimeter. We can only assign the second perimeter. We can only assign the second perimeter instead. Okay, when we try to run our program, we see that we get a value because 60 is going to be represented by A. So that's all about perimeters. So there is also what I call defining default value for arguments. So default value for arguments, let's say that, for example, the program you are working on is a program for a website, and you want to ask the agenda of the person is male or female. What you are going to use are the function along with the if, else, and elif statements. So what we are going to pass in as here, we are going to, what's what they call the default value for arguments. This is what I've been talking about. So like W, this is what they call a default value by argument. W to assign a value by the default. So that's what they call a default value for argument. So let's for now try to run a program of a website trying to ask a person agenda whether is male or female using the elif, the if, the else statements. So let's go and we see. So the code of the function is as above. So in this function we have written down, since we are ignoring what the gender is, what the gender is of the person, we are going to set the gender value as unknown. So because we don't know the gender of the person, so we are going to say to set the value as by default of the parameter to as unknown. The value for the argument, by default for the gender to unknown. So in order to fulfill the empty space in case there was no answer provided, so while calling for a program, we set our option. If it's a male, they will enter M, and if female, they will enter F, and if they don't enter anything, the gender is going to be unknown. So if they are male, they are going to enter M. If they are female, they are going to enter F. So if none of these is not entered, M or F, then the gender is going to be unknown. So if none of here is not entered like this, so the gender is going to be unknown. So when we try to run our program, you'll see that it's going to give us unknown. So when we try to put, let me say, so let's put M for male and run our program and see what we will get. Yes, as you see in our terminal, we have got male. So if we try to change to F, and we see, yes, it has given us female. So we can also prompt a user to, we can ask a user a question like this to prompt a user. So enter the gender. Okay, let me see. Let's change this to enter. Let's prompt a user to enter a gender. Enter your gender. So let's the user enter a gender. So when you try to run a program, you see that it's prompting us to enter the gender of the user. So when we try to put M and we press enter, you see that it's telling us the user that is male. So it's right telling us the user that the user is male. So when we run again our program and we press F and we fill in F, you see that the user is female. So when again we try to run our program and we don't put anything, we see that it just jumps, nothing happens. So let's then, the user is, so as you see our code to prompt a user to ask a user with gender whether is male or female. So we have sent, this is a value, we're sending a parameter with a value for an argument by default. So the gender by default will be unknown. So when we try to comment out this and we run our program in the terminal, we shall see that we get unknown. Reason, we have not fed anything in the call after calling the program. So when you try to feed in M, you try to see that it prints male. If you try to feed in F, meaning for female, to see that it's going to bring female. So if we don't feed anything, when we try to run our program, we see that we get what they call unknown in our terminal. So that's all about what we call default value for arguments. So we have also what they call the key value argument. For the key value argument, so we have been on the value argument. So this is what they call the value argument. So we have also what they call the key value argument, whereby first of all we first write our function using the default value for the arguments that we saw in our previously some good seconds ago, to be able to apply our modification on later. So to be able to apply what they call the key value arguments. Using the key value argument method, our function will be differently from one of the previous one. So we will simply write a sentence and pray on words. So we are going to just write a sentence and we are going to pray with those words, so to come out with a keyword value. So a keyword value, it's like when we learned about dictionaries, we saw what we called a key and we saw what we called a value. So in dictionaries we have values and keys. So a key, it represents a value. So it's like the same here, that a keyword value, we are going to use what they call keywords to represent those values, to represent those strings, to represent those statements, to represent those integers. So but in functions. So let's make a function to move on with what they call, and more to get more deep in keyword arguments so that you can understand it well. Let's write our function here. So we are going to change this. Let's make using value by default. So I subject I, comma, let's say vibe equals love. Okay, let's say equals love, then noun, let me say noun, the noun will be Python. Maybe the noun will be I love Python. So let's remove this stuff and print out statement. No, here just let's call what I call a statement. So we can print out subject. So we are using keys. So these are what they call keys, as we learned in dictionary. So these subjects are what we subject, variable, noun. These are called the keys. So these are keys. So we are using keys to get a result. So we use the default arguments as to get a result. So when we try to run our program, we see that we get I love you, I love Python. So these are keys representing these values, these strings. So these are keys. So however, whatever we are going to do to this function is more than that. So let's try to change the parameters. So we are going to set them in a different order. We are going to change the order. For example, let's write a different statement, or let's use this. Let's write a different statement maybe, but we are going to change the order. So when we try to send, let me see, let's try to say like print, then none. Let's print none. Let me say print none plus some variable. Let me say is awesome. So in that, this none, the noun will just going to represent Python, because it's just a key for Python. When we try to run our program, we see that we have got Python is awesome. So meaning that no matter we change the arrangement, we still get the same function. So the function we created earlier is named as statement. So it takes 3 arguments, and since we are going to pass through another 3 arguments right now in our statements, so Python is awesome. So as you see, we have passed in these arguments. Just we can also pass in here, like we can pass in the calling statement. So we can change this. We can pass this in the you can pass them here. So when you try to run a program, we see that we are going to get the same results. Oh, none is not defined. So let's define it and we see. Yes, you see that we get the same. Oops, oh no, this must be Python. So let's see that that's Python. So even if we try to run the code, oops, let's run again. Awesome. We have here an error. Let's correct this error. We'll have to pass again the statement. So let's see when run again. Python is awesome. Let's also have here comments. Let's run again and see. Yes, that's what I've been talking about. So because when we try to run, we have passed in through another 3 arguments. We see that these arguments are not affected with the keys, because there are no keys which have been called by default by default. So Python is going to assign each item following with the order set. As you have tried to call them in a function. So you can change this and remove this. You can change anything, like you can change this. Oops, can change this to, let's call it a vibe. So when we try to run our program, you see that in our terminal it has changed. Reason, due to the due to the arrangement of our keys in our program. So when you try to run, let me say copy this and paste it in the call function, you see that let me see, so even if we try to call them in the function, we see that oops, we got nothing. What is happening? Let's first comment this beyond the program and see. Let's see whether this works when we try to call them in the function. No, it can't work because oops, it can't work. So it can't work. So let's run our program. Okay. Also, if you want to pass it in a different order, I've been talking about that. If you want to pass it a different order, you can change each and everything. Let's say so change this. No, let's try to add another calling. Let's call it noun. So even though you want to change it to another in a different order, maybe you want to use different keywords of arguments, you can put at the beginning while defining your functions. Let's say you would like to change the order position of your parameters, as I've been telling you. So you can also change this to, let me say, let's say great. Then this, let's call it a verb. Let's call this is. Let's type this is. Then subject, because we are trying to change the order, and call this. Let's call this. So when you try to run this program, as we have changed the arrangement of the keys, as because this noun is the last one, verb is the second one, subject is the last one. So, but according to the first order, as we call them in the function, we see that the parameters, the keys, even though you change the keys, the function, but it will still use the first order as you assign them, as you assign the parameters in the function at the beginning. So even if you change everything, it remains apart from when you are printing out. So here in printing out, you can change anything, so it won't follow the order. When you are printing out the order, it won't follow the order, but when you are assigning it, when you have called the function, even though you change the format of the key in a disorganized way, it will still arrange them as you call them by default while you were beginning to make your functions, calling your parameters in the first. So that was all about defining functions, perimeters, keyword arguments, default value for arguments in perimeters, the pass statements, and functions, defining functions in Python. Thank you for watching my videos. Just don't forget to comment, to share my video, subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get more and more videos about Python. So thank you very much. I love you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. Also, you may have a friend of yours who want to learn about programming and is very interested in Python. You can share the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for supporting me, the work I do. I love you. See you again in the next tutorial. Maybe in the next tutorial we are going to talk about classes. Maybe classes and objects in Python. This was Undercode.